Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Kiki and today's video is going to be a little sit down, chit chat, book review on the latest Crescent City book, House of Flame and Shadow. Now, just before we get into this book, I want to let everyone know that this review and chit chat will contain spoilers. I want to be able to sit down here and talk freely about this book, what happens in this book, what I loved, what I disliked, what I think others will dislike in it, what I think the fandom did to us. I want to talk about book 1 and book 2. So if you have not read any of these books, I would suggest not watching this video, unless of course you don't mind spoilers and you don't mind knowing what happens in a story before reading it. House of Flame and Shadow is book 3 in the Crescent City series. This was released last week and yes, I am part of the fandom. I absolutely love the Crescent City series. It is my all-time favorite series. I have a very kind of big attachment to this series because Crescent City 1 is the book that got me back into reading after a really long reading slump. So I have a soft spot for this series. I'm very biased with my opinions with this series. Saying that though, I do see problems in this book and I do see how some people aren't rating this 5 stars. I waited 2 years for this book and when I tell you I was counting down from the cover reveal, I just went absolutely insane. Like, I could not sleep. I stayed up till midnight for this to get released. I started reading it at midnight. I think I fell asleep by 1:30 in the morning. 3.5 days it took me to get through this chunky book. It's like 834 pages and I read it in 3.5 days. Did I completely ignore my life when I was reading this book? Yes, I did. I didn't cook dinner 2 nights in a row. I was so engrossed in this world. The emotions this book took me on, the anxiety I felt in this book was absolutely next level. And because of the roller coaster of emotions this book took me on, hands down, 5 stars. I am rating this book based on my emotions and how I felt whilst reading this book. I'm not rating it on the writing. I'm not rating it on the disappointments I found in it. Literally my favorite series, so it just defaults to a 5 star. If you have read book 1 and if you have read book 2, you know that at the end of book 2, the biggest cliffhanger of all cliffhangers happened, and I sat on this cliffhanger for 2 years. And because of that, because it was such a long wait, I feel like the fandom really went wild with it. We dove so deep into theories and crossovers because at the end of book 2, BRYCE falls into the Night Court from the ACOTAR series and we all lost our minds for it. We had no idea where this was going. We didn't. We just took that one line and we rolled with it. I think the fandom did us dirty. This book starts off with BRYCE in the Night Court with Nesta and Azriel. And we loved that, okay? I actually loved the friendship BRYCE and Nesta formed. And I'm sorry, but there was a little bit of tension between Azriel and BRYCE. I felt it. I felt the tension. I am one of those fans that totally ship Azriel and BRYCE together. I ship them being true fae mates. They're not. Sarah confirmed before this book was released that Hunt and BRYCE are endgame. But the tension I felt there was something there. And I don't know what it is, and I still to this day believe after reading this that there is still something else there for Az. And I don't know when his book is coming, but I know Elaine's book is next. I know next year we are getting the next ACOTAR book, and it is Elaine's. Whether that's with Az or not is a whole question that none of us have answered. There's a lot of speculation out there. None of it has been confirmed though, so don't listen to it. The 3 of them spent a good chunk of the beginning of this book together, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But was the crossover what we wanted? I don't think it was. I think a lot of us fans are disappointed with the crossover we got because once BRYCE went back to her world, That was it. We did not get any more crossover. We got no more Az, we got no more Nesta until the very end of the book. And even then, what we got at the end wasn't really a wrap-up. Like, to be completely honest, a crossover wasn't really needed in this book. And I think a lot of us are feeling a little let down by that. But it's not Sarah's fault. I want to say that it's not Sarah's fault that we feel disappointed by the crossover, because she didn't promise us anything with this crossover. She didn't confirm anything. She didn't tell us how big of a crossover it was going to be. She did nothing. She just dropped that last little part in CC2, and we as a fandom rolled with it. We went so deep into the theories of what could happen and what could not happen that we hyped ourselves up. We hyped ourselves up and it backfired on us, I think. I was a little let down with that crossover, I'm not gonna lie. I don't feel like Azrael got wrapped up in the end here. I feel like that was really open-ended. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of him. I would have liked to have seen a lot more Recent. We didn't get that. Recent is in a bonus chapter though, and it is a bonus chapter that I have read, and I loved that bonus chapter. I wish that bonus chapter was actually in the book, because then we would have gotten a little bit more crossover. I have to admit, I'm not a huge fan of Nesta. Wasn't a big fan of her in Akatar, wasn't a big fan of her in Silver Flames. The only reason why I got around her was because of Cass. She actually grew on me in this book, and I actually really liked her in this book, and I liked her with BRYCE. So I'm really hoping in future books we might get a little bit more of a BRYCE and Nesta friendship there, because that is a friendship I can get behind. In book 1, BRYCE is my absolute queen. She is a fictional character that I could see being best friends with. I see a lot of myself in her. I absolutely loved her. In book 2, I loved her in Hunt, but not as much as I did in book 1. In book 2, I feel like Sarah really turned me off from BRYCE and Hunt and really put me onto Rune and Lydia. And I absolutely love Rune and Lydia. Night and day forever. I am a Rune girly through and through over a Hunt girly. There is something about Rune and Lydia that I just cannot put my finger on, but their connection is 10 times better than BRYCE and Hunt's connection in my mind. And I was really hoping that this book was going to bring me back to Hunt and BRYCE. And I absolutely love Hunt on his own. I think he's funny, I think he's sexy, I think he's great. But Hunt and BRYCE together, I was not vibing them in this book. There was a point there where I was just like, I feel really, really heartbroken for Hunt. At the beginning of the book, when BRYCE is in the Night Court, Hunt is getting tortured in the dungeons, and I just, like, my little heart broke for him. He was so, my BRYCE, my kids, my future with her. I need to get back to my mate. I need to find where my mate is. And then little Miss BRYCE over here in the Night Court doesn't think of Hunt at all. And I know she has a lot going on where she is, but I just feel like if you've just mated and you are true mates, should she not be so much more passionate about getting back to Hunt and worried about what Hunt is going through in the dungeons? I didn't get any of that at all. I think she mentioned him twice in the beginning of the book when they were separated, and I wasn't here for that. I felt really like sorry for Hunt, that he's over here getting tortured and all he can think about is BRYCE. Meanwhile, she's over here, and yeah, she's in a different world, she's going through a lot, but you guys only just mated. Why are you not more stressed about trying to get back to Hunt? And then I kind of got to a point where we got our reunion with Hunt and BRYCE, and oh, for one page, I absolutely loved it. I loved their reunion for that one page, and then it just fizzled out. They are mates. They have their reunion. They have to hold off on having their proper reunion because they're in a meeting and they've got all this stuff going on. They're finally alone, and she's like, can you just hold me tonight? Just cuddle me. I'm sorry, you guys are mates and you were just separated and he was just tortured and you were in a different world and you just want to cuddle? No, you just want to cuddle? So that kind of made me go a bit, not really vibing their connection. They bicker. For so much of the middle of the book, Hunt and BRYCE bicker and they argue. And again, I know in real life that is a very real thing, but we are in a fictional world where our mates are obsessed with each other. And they were bickering, and she was so like, get over it, Hunt. He was just tortured for you, and you're standing there saying, get over it. I've got bigger things to worry about. He's your mate. Bryce really, really bugged me in this book. And it wasn't until the end that I started liking her again. I don't know if anyone else felt like that. Did anyone else feel like this in this book? Because she really, really annoyed me. This book was so full of Easter eggs too. So many Easter eggs for Throne of Glass. And I know Sarah has confirmed that she is not done with Throne of Glass. I know she said in her interview just before this book that she plans on writing another book soon, and she's not going to say anything or what characters might pop up and what characters might not pop up. But I'm telling you now, that interview, along with the Easter eggs in this book for Throne of Glass, she's writing another Throne of Glass book. I swear she is. Again, not confirmed, but I'm vibing that she is going to write another Throne of Glass book because of the Easter eggs that were in this. There were so many little side character stories in this book as well, and I think some of them weren't really needed. Like the storyline with Ethan and Sigrid, I think that's how you pronounce it, that kind of fizzled out. Didn't really warrant any of it. Like it didn't end up becoming a thing or not a thing. Like it literally just fizzled out. I will admit there were a couple of parts in the middle of this book where it started lulling for me. It started getting a little bit boring, but it wasn't long before it picked up again. We started getting a lot of answers in this book. We started getting a lot of like nostalgic feelings from book one. So in book one, I became very attached to Danica, Leobar, and Connor, and we get some appearances from these three in here. We get a little nod to them. We get a little closure from Danica, Leobar, and Connor, and I cried my little eyes out with Connor and Leobar. Like I was sitting here and I was reading it and I was bawling my eyes out because of that. I just loved them so much, and I loved that Sarah included them into this book to wrap it up. The big battle at the end of this book was so action-packed. It was a lot of thinking, a lot of information, a lot going on, and I was absolutely here for it. This series is a high fantasy series and it's modern as well, so there's a lot to take in, a lot to think about, and I absolutely loved that. I loved everything about it. The only thing I didn't like is that there were a lot of fake deaths in this. There was a few there, and a couple of them had my heart pounding a little bit there. Bryce has a fake death, and that annoyed me a little bit. It didn't hit me like I think it should have hit me, because Sarah confirmed previously that none of the main characters die. So when Bryce had her fake death, I was a little annoyed because I knew she wasn't actually dead. So after waiting 2 years for this book, I can say that I did love it. I know I touched on a few things that I didn't like here. There were a couple of boring chapters, but I mean, for a book so big, it's expected. It's got to lull in places and pick up in others. It cannot be up here through that whole 800 pages. Like, could you imagine? I would probably have a heart attack. I needed a couple of quiet moments in this book, and they were there, and the exciting moments were so exciting, and the Easter eggs in here were exciting. The future possible series that we're going to get out of this, so exciting. I loved the wrap up. I did come to really love Bryce and Hunt at the end of the book. They started out and I felt really sorry for Hunt. Bryce really annoyed me. They bickered a lot, but then they came round, and I just absolutely loved the ending for them. I really, really enjoyed it. I honestly think my disappointments for this book come from the excitement of the fandom. It comes from all the theories I read and watched online. It comes from me overhyping it myself. So I know I got 3/4 of the way through this book and I was like, you know what? I need to pull back my expectations on this because it's not going where I thought it was going to go. And as soon as I pulled back those expectations, the book became amazing again, and it was all on myself. At the end of the day, this is a Crescent City book, and it is exactly what we got. We got a Crescent City book. This is not an ACOTAR book. If it was an ACOTAR book, it would have been marketed differently. It wouldn't have been marketed as a Crescent City book. And I think we all miss ACOTAR so much that we were hoping for a lot more in this. So if you haven't read this yet and you are watching this, just know that this is a Crescent City book, and because it is a Crescent City book, it was incredible. I loved it. I thought it wrapped up the series really well. I know we are getting another book in the Crescent City world, but it won't be based on Hunt and Bryce's story. Their story is wrapped up here. Same thing that she did with Pharaoh and Rhysand in the first 3 books for ACOTAR. She's done it here with Bryce and Hunt. I don't know when we're getting the next Crescent City book. I know she said that it's down the line and it's a while away. She wants to go and write the next ACOTAR book for next year, and then she's starting a whole new series, which is really exciting. So I loved this. I loved Hunt and Bryce in the end. I loved how their story wrapped up. I loved the cameos we got from the past characters and the way that she wrote them. It was very emotional for me. I loved Lydia and Rune's storyline. I loved Ethan and how he grew as a character. I loved all the side characters. The only thing I didn't like was the side character with Ethan and Sigrid. I didn't really understand that one. I do think it is worth the hype. It was worth the 2-year wait for me. This series will forever have a special place in my heart, and for that reason it gets 5 stars. That's just me being biased because I love this series so much and I'm so attached to these characters. But I can understand why a lot of people out there aren't rating it 5 stars. There's a lot of people rating it 3.5 stars, maybe 4 stars, and it is because of the disappointments they found in it and the parts that were quite boring in it. I completely understand that. It's one of those series where I will accept no criticism on, even from myself. So I would love to know, have you read House of Flame and Shadow? Drop a comment below for me. Let me know if you have read this. Let me know what your thoughts were, if you liked it, if you didn't really like it. If you like this video, friends, please don't forget to hit like, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.